Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Teed Up with Phil Melton. I'm your host, Phil Melton with Bellwether Enterprise. I am proud to be joined today by Chris Finlay, the chairman and CEO of Lloyd Jones Capital, based down in Florida. Chris, nice to see you this morning.
Hey, good to see you again, Phil.
Thank you. So, Chris, if you could just, why don't you give us a little bit of an overview of kind of your organization, if you would, before we kind of dive into the topic of the day.
Sure. We're focused on multifamily and senior housing, primarily management, development, and investment, and focused throughout the Southeast. We're expanding into the Southwest, at least we were, and expect to continue there. And probably our key focus is more senior housing than multifamily as of last year.
So I understand that the name that you, Lloyd Jones, comes from honoring some of your past relatives. You want to tell me just a quick bit about that?
Sure, yeah. So Lloyd is my great-grandfather, and Jones was my grandfather in Wales. They were both prominent business folks, and my grandfather Lloyd had a very big construction company and built many major buildings throughout northern Wales, and my grandfather had a foundry in Wales, so he was Jones the Foundry. So, I really, I really enjoy my Welsh heritage. So I just thought put them together and call it Lloyd Jones. And
pretty good.
So yeah, it's been fun. Yeah.
So
now I have my grandson.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have my grandson working for me now, so it's going through a lot of generations here.
No kidding. That's terrific, Chris.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
So we're obviously going through in a very interesting time in our country with the pandemic and everything that's going on. So, what have you found as kind of the biggest impact has been to your organization over the last kind of 30, 45 days as this kind of taken hold? What have you seen?
Yeah, I think, I've been doing this for 40 years, Phil, and I've been through a couple of major, what I consider pretty bad economic times. Late 80s, early 90s were, as close to a depression as you could probably get. And then the 08, 010 cycle was pretty bad as well. This is really different. This is, this is not an economic, downturn. This is a black swan. This is a real black swan, and no one expected this. So, look, I think when you get into tough times like this, you need to, first of all, position your company to survive. So, so obviously you have to make hard decisions on how do you conserve cash. And how do you make sure that you can weather the storm? And then that's number one, probably. And then number two, you need to focus on your assets. So, you've really got to drill down and start putting extra resources because it takes extra work during these times. Focus on your properties, focus on your assets, focus on your customer. In our case, it's our residents. And really work hard to get us all through it. Because if they don't get through it, we don't get through it.
Right.
So, and it's just like with you as a lender, if I don't get through it, you don't get through it. So, so it's sort of a situation here where we all have to go downstream. We have to make sure that our tenants and our residents survive and can pay rent and occupy the property. And, in order for us to survive and for us to pay the mortgage, and then you have to make sure that we're doing that so that you guys saw it. So it's, it's a real, everybody has to focus on downstream, helping your customer, helping your client, helping your tenant survive this issue.
It seems interesting. It's oftentimes we hear that, when we're talking about closing a transaction together and what have you, is you're on one side of the table, I'm on the other side of the table, kind of in just this metaphysical sort of a way. And the reality is today it feels more and more like the relationship and the symbiotic relationship between, lenders and borrowers and what have you has never been closer because we have to work so closely together for the reasons that you just illustrated. Because it's during this particular time that I found just how intertwined we are, not just as, we're doing a transaction. It is truly, we are we're with each other, and we need to through good and bad, and we've really got to work together to make sure we can kind of get through this. So yeah, it's been an interesting time and a different sort of a perspective, I think. So how did this change your outlook for your business? You guys have been in acquisition mode and what have you. So has that kind of taken a pause for the last 30 or 45 days of more asset management? How did this impact your potential look for additional opportunities to buy over the next 12 and 24 months? Kind of give me your prognostication of kind of how this impacts you from a development and acquisition standpoint.
Sure. I think, look, there's a lot of money out there still. There's a lot of capital out there waiting to be deployed. I think pretty much everybody is on hold right now. But I think very quickly I think in our industry, once we get a good handle on where this is going to shake out as far as tenants paying the rent and so forth, which so far, by the way, has been exceptionally more positive than I ever expected. And I think that's throughout our whole industry. People realize this is their home, and hey, they do not want to lose that home. So they're paying the rent in numbers way above what anybody expected. But once we get by that, I think there's going to be some folks that are in distress and that are going to need some help, and so we have rescue capital, what we call rescue capital, that's available to step in on a preferred equity basis for those folks that may need some help in just weathering the storm. They got a great asset. They just may have a shortfall. They may have, for some reason, a small problem. And hey, there's capital going to be out there to help those folks. And we bring both the capital and the expertise to help them from an operational point of view. So we look for that, especially in the senior business. We think in the senior arena, there's going to be a tremendous amount of that. The senior industry, as you know, has just been absolutely really hit very, very hard with this virus beyond anybody's, and it's not their fault. I mean, there's no blame to point here. This is taking the wind out of everybody's sail. I mean, you could be the best hospital in the world and you've been impacted dramatically by this. So I think there's going to be tremendous opportunity here very soon to get into, the program where you can make some investments, help people to weather this storm and get out of it. And then also, I think, soon as you guys and the capital markets start, opening up and being a little more, productive, then I think there's going to be plenty of capital out there. Start deals rolling again. No question.
I agree with that. I do. So what do you think the biggest lesson is you're going to learn from your organization? You've obviously probably had to operate a little bit differently than maybe you had used to in the past in terms of being more remote and what have you. But, what's a big lesson you think you're going to take from here that maybe you weren't doing before, but now because of this, you've learned, hey, we can do this a little bit differently, or you can find ways to be more efficient. What do you think your largest lesson your organization is going to learn through all this?
I think obviously we've been preaching this for a long time. Don't over leverage, right? So if you get into an over leveraged situation, you get into a problem. So first downturn, you're going to be hit, and so leverage is your friend when times are booming, and your absolute enemy when it's not booming. So so we've always preached being conservative, being low leverage. Fortunately, our portfolio probably averages 60-65%, if that. So you can weather storms that way. I think that's an important thing. And then I think the other lesson to learn is it's a people business. It's all about people, like you said, Phil. Your relationships that you have with your bankers and your lenders and your tenants and your vendors and your suppliers. It's a people business. You mentioned earlier we sit across the table, but we're partners. I mean, you've got an investment, we got an investment, and if it doesn't work, it hurts both of us. So everybody's in this together. So I think working with people is really important, and I think that's some of the lessons you learn when times like this happen. Who you can count on.
Chris, on that, thank you very much. Let me ask you, what are kind of the first 2 or 3 things you're looking forward to doing when we get past the shelter in place and back to kind of more normalcy?
The most exciting thing is go to the office. I can't wait to get the hell back to my office. So I have a pretty nice office here, but I mean, I really miss being around people and stuff. But no, I think, I think my wife is dying for me to take her out to a nice restaurant. So hopefully we can get out to some restaurants here pretty soon. And, and then probably a trip to Costco would be number 2 on my list. So,
There you go. All right.
So
Well,
anyway.
Chris, we'll come back to you in just a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the property and stuff. Appreciate you joining us this morning, and everyone else, hope to see you somewhere on the first tee.